The sound of sirens pierced the quiet suburban neighborhood as Karen Johnson stormed out of her immaculate home, her face flushed with indignation. Her pristine white BMW gleamed in the driveway, a testament to her meticulous attention to detail, a detail that was about to be tested in the most dramatic way. Across the street, a military police officer was calmly placing a middle-aged man in the back of a patrol car. Karen's eyes narrowed as she recognized the man, Colonel James Harrington, her neighbor and the bane of her existence. For years, she had waged a silent war against the good colonel, nitpicking every perceived infraction of the Homeowners Association's HOA, strict bylaws. Unacceptable, Karen shrieked, storming across the street, her designer heels clacking against the pristine pavement. What is the meaning of this? The military police officer, a young surgeon, turned to face the irate woman, his expression largely unruffled. Ma'am, this is a military matter. I'd advise you to return to your home and mind your own business. Karen's eyes flashed with indignation. Mind my own business. This is my neighborhood, and that man is my neighbor. I demand to know what's going on. The surgeon sighed, realizing that this was not going to be a simple arrest. Ma'am, Colonel Harrington is being taken into custody for a violation of military regulations. I'm not at liberty to discuss the details. Karen's mind raced, her wheels turning as she contemplated her next move. This was her chance to finally one-up the infuriating colonel and assert her dominance over the neighborhood. Her lips curled into a triumphant smile. Well, if this is a military matter, then I suppose I should contact the Pentagon directly, Karen said, her voice dripping with false concern. I'm sure they would be very interested to hear about this. The surgeon's eyes widened, and he immediately reached for his radio, barking orders and calling for backup. Karen watched with a smug satisfaction as the scene unfolded, her victory seemingly within reach. Little did she know, her call to the Pentagon was about to set off a chain of events that would turn her world upside down. The sound of additional military vehicles filling the street only served to further elevate Karen's sense of triumph. She stood on the sidewalk, arms crossed, her gaze fixed upon the unfolding drama. It was as if the universe had finally aligned in her favor, granting her the opportunity to exact her long-awaited revenge on the meddlesome colonel. Within minutes, a high-ranking officer emerged from one of the vehicles, his uniform adorned with a multitude of medals and insignia. Karen straightened her posture, ready to greet the newcomer with an air of feigned concern and civic duty. Good afternoon, Ma'am, the officer said, approaching Karen with a polite nod. I'm Colonel Simmons, and I understand you have some concerns about the situation here. Karen's lips curled into a self-assured smile. Why, yes, Colonel Simmons. As a concerned member of this community, I simply couldn't stand by and watch as one of our respected neighbors was being mistreated by your officers. I felt it was my duty to bring this matter to the attention of the proper authorities. Colonel Simmons raised a brow, his expression betraying a hint of skepticism. I see. Well, I can assure you that this is a legitimate military matter, and we are handling it accordingly. I appreciate your concern, but I must insist that you return to your home and allow us to do our jobs. Karen's eyes narrowed, her confidence faltering slightly. But surely you must understand that I have a vested interest in the well-being of our neighborhood. Shouldn't I be involved in the process? The colonel's response was firm and unwavering. I'm afraid that's not possible, ma'am. This is a classified military operation, and your involvement would only serve to complicate matters. I must ask you to leave the area immediately. Karen's jaw tightened, her carefully constructed plan beginning to unravel. She opened her mouth to protest, but the sound of a familiar voice cut her off. Karen? What on earth is going on? Karen turned to see her longtime friend and fellow HOA board member Susan, approaching with the look of utter bewilderment on her face. Susan's perfectly coiffed hair and designer sunglasses were a testament to her status as one of the neighborhood's elite, and Karen knew she had to tread carefully. Susan, thank goodness you're here, Karen exclaimed, her voice dripping with feigned concern. There's been a terrible misunderstanding, and I'm trying to get to the bottom of it. Susan's gaze shifted from Karen to the military personnel surrounding the scene, her brow furrowing with confusion. What on earth is happening? I saw the commotion from my window and had to come take a look. Karen seized the opportunity, determined to sway her friend to her side. It's Colonel Harrington, Susan. These military officers have arrested him, and they're refusing to give me any information. I'm simply trying to do what's best for our community. Susan's eyes widened, and she turned to Colonel Simmons, her voice laced with a hint of authority. Colonel, I'm Susan Williamson, and I'm on the HOA board. I'd like to know what's going on here. The colonel sighed, realizing that he was now dealing with not one, but two determined women who refused to back down. Ma'am, I understand your concern, but as I've already explained to your friend, this is a classified military matter. I'm afraid I can't disclose any details. Susan's brow furrowed, and she placed a hand on Karen's arm, a gesture that seemed to calm the other woman. I see. Well, surely there's something we can do to help. After all, we're all part of this community, and we want to ensure that everything is handled properly. Karen's eyes lit up, her confidence renewed by Susan's intervention. Yes, exactly. We just want to make sure that justice is served and that our neighborhood is protected. Colonel Simmons sighed, realizing that he was facing an uphill battle. I understand your concerns, but I must insist that you both return to your homes and allow us to handle this matter. Any further interference could jeopardize the operation. Karen and Susan exchanged a knowing glance, their determination etched on their faces. This was far from over. As the military personnel continued their work, Karen and Susan retreated to the sidewalk, their heads bent together in a conspiratorial whisper. What do you think is really going on? Susan asked, her brow furrowed with concern. Karen's eyes narrowed, her mind racing with possibilities. I'm not sure, but whatever it is, it must be serious. You know how Colonel Harrington has always been a thorn in our side, always complaining about the HOA rules and regulations. Maybe he's finally gotten himself into real trouble. Susan nodded thoughtfully. That's true, but don't you think the military's reaction is a bit, well, excessive? I mean, they've practically turned our quiet little neighborhood into a war zone. Karen's lips curled into a sly grin. That's precisely why we need to get to the bottom of this. There's more going on here than meets the eye, and I intend to find out what it is. Susan hesitated, her natural caution warring with her curiosity. Karen, I don't know. This could be dangerous. We should probably just let the military handle it and stay out of their way. But Karen was having none of it. Susan, think about it. If we can uncover something juicy, something that could really damage the colonel's reputation, just imagine the power we'd have over him. No more complaints about the landscaping, no more challenges to the HOA's decisions. We could finally put him in his place. Susan's eyes widened, and a spark of mischief ignited within them. Well, when you put it that way, I suppose a little investigation couldn't hurt. But we have to be careful, Karen. I don't want to end up in trouble with the law. Karen's grin widened, and she patted Susan's arm reassuringly. Don't worry, my dear. I know exactly what I'm doing. Now let's see if we can't get a closer look at what's happening over there. With a newfound sense of purpose, the two women began to make their way towards the commotion, their curiosity and determination fueling their every step. As Karen and Susan approached the scene, they were met with a wall of military personnel, their expressions stern and unyielding. I'm sorry, Mom, but I'm going to have to ask you to step back, one of the officers said, his hand raised in a gesture of authority. Karen's eyes narrowed, her lips pursed in a defiant pout. But we're concerned members of this community, and we have a right to know what's going on. Surely you can understand that. The officer shook his head, his gaze unwavering. I'm afraid I can't disclose any information about this operation. It's classified, and your involvement could jeopardize the entire mission. Susan placed a hand on Karen's arm, her voice low and soothing. We understand, officer. We don't mean to cause any trouble. We just want to make sure our neighborhood is safe, that's all. The officer's expression softened slightly, and he nodded. I appreciate your concern, Mom, but I can assure you that this situation is under control. The best thing you can do is return to your homes and let us handle it. Karen opened her mouth to protest, but Susan squeezed her arm, silently pleading with her to comply. With a huff of frustration, Karen turned and stormed back towards her BMW, Susan following close behind. Can you believe the nerve of those officers? Karen fumed, her hands gripping the steering wheel with white-knuckled intensity. They think they can just waltz into our neighborhood and take over like that. Susan nodded, her brow furrowed with concern. I know, Karen, but you have to admit they have a point. This is a military operation, and we really shouldn't be interfering. Karen's eyes flashed with determination. That's where you're wrong, Susan. This is our neighborhood, and we have a responsibility to protect it. I'm not going to just sit back and let the military do whatever they want. Susan sighed, realizing that there was no talking Karen out of her crusade. All right, fine. But please promise me you'll be careful. I don't want either of us to get into any trouble. Karen's lips curled into a sly smile. Don't worry, Susan. I know exactly what I'm doing. Now, let's see if we can't find a way to get a closer look at what's really going on. With that, the two women set off, determined to uncover the truth, no matter the cost. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the neighborhood, Karen and Susan huddled together in the corner of Karen's living room, their voices hushed and conspiratorial. Okay, so here's what we know so far, Karen said, her brow furrowed in concentration. Colonel Harrington was arrested by the military, and they've completely taken over the area. But they're being incredibly tight-lipped about the whole thing. Susan nodded, her gaze focused and intense. And you're sure there's more to this than just a simple military matter? I mean, the colonel has always been a bit of a troublemaker, but this seems like an awfully big reaction. Karen leaned in, her eyes gleaming with a hint of mischief. Exactly. That's why I think we need to do a little digging. There's something going on here, and I'm determined to find out what it is. Susan hesitated, her fingers drumming nervously on the arm of the chair. Karen, I don't know. This could be really dangerous. What if we get caught interfering with a military operation? We could end up in serious trouble. Karen waved a dismissive hand. Oh, please, Susan. We're not going to do anything illegal. We're just going to poke around a bit, see if we can't uncover some juicy information. Think of the leverage we'd have over the colonel if we found something scandalous. Susan's brow furrowed, her inner conflict evident on her face. I don't know, Karen. I really don't think we should be doing this. Maybe we should just let the military handle it and stay out of their way. But Karen was having none of it. Susan, you know as well as I do that the colonel has been a thorn in our side for years. This is our chance to finally get the upper hand. Just imagine how much easier our lives would be if we could hold something over him. Susan sighed, her resolve crumbling in the face of Karen's relentless determination. All right, fine. But we have to be careful, Karen. No more of your crazy stunts, okay? I don't want to end up in jail. Karen's lips curled into a triumphant grin. Don't worry, Susan. I've got a plan. Now, let's get to work. The two women huddled closer, their heads bent together as they began to plot their next move, determined to uncover the truth no matter the cost. The night had grown colder, and the neighborhood had fallen silent, save for the occasional hum of a passing car. But Karen and Susan were wide awake, their eyes fixed on the commotion that continued to unfold across the street. Look, there's another military vehicle pulling up, Susan whispered, her voice tense with excitement. Karen peered through the window, her gaze narrowed in concentration. I wonder what they're up to now. This just keeps getting more and more intriguing. The two women watched as a group of uniformed officers emerged from the vehicle, their movements swift and efficient. They gathered around the patrol car where Colonel Harrington was being held, their voices too low to be heard from Karen's vantage point. Do you think they're going to transfer him somewhere else? Susan asked, her brow furrowed with concern. Karen's lips curled into a sly smile. Only one way to find out. Come on, let's go take a closer look. Before Susan could protest, Karen was already slipping out the front door, her designer heels clicking against the pavement. Susan hesitated for a moment, then reluctantly followed, her heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and fear. As they approached the scene, they were met with a wall of military personnel, their expressions stern and unyielding. Mom, I'm going to have to ask you to return to your home, one of the officers said, his voice firm and authoritative. Karen's eyes narrowed, her chin lifted in defiance. I'm a concerned citizen, officer. Surely you can understand my desire to know what's going on in my own neighborhood. The officer's gaze hardened. This is a classified military operation, ma'am. I cannot disclose any information, and I must insist that you return to your home immediately. Karen opened her mouth to protest, but Susan placed a hand on her arm, her expression pleading. Come on, Karen, let's just go. We don't want to cause any trouble. For a moment, it seemed as if Karen might refuse, but then her shoulders slumped in defeat, and she allowed Susan to lead her back towards their homes. As they walked, Karen's mind raced, her determination renewed. This isn't over, Susan. I'm going to get to the bottom of this, no matter what it takes. Susan could only sigh, realizing that there was no stopping her friend's relentless pursuit of the truth. The following morning dawned with a sense of unease that hung over the neighborhood like a thick fog. Karen had spent the night tossing and turning, her mind consumed by the mystery that had unfolded on her very doorstep. As she emerged from her home, her designer sunglasses perched precariously on the bridge of her nose, she was greeted by the sight of an unfamiliar vehicle parked in Colonel Harrington's driveway. Her heart raced, and she quickened her pace, determined to uncover the latest development in the unfolding drama. But as she approached the driveway, she was met by a stern-faced man in a dark suit, his expression unreadable. Mom, I'm going to have to ask you to step back, the man said, his voice calm but unyielding. Karen's eyes narrowed, her lips pursed in a defiant pout. Excuse me? This is my neighborhood, and I have a right to know what's going on. The man's gaze remained unwavering. I'm sorry, ma'am, but this is a matter of national security. I can't disclose any information, and I'm going to have to ask you to return to your home. Karen's heart sank, the realization that she was out of her depth slowly dawning on her. But what about Colonel Harrington? What happened to him? The man's expression softened slightly. I'm afraid I can't discuss the details of his case. All I can say is that he's being taken into custody and will be transported to a secure location. I understand your concern, but this is beyond the scope of a civilian investigation. Karen opened her mouth to protest, but the sound of a vehicle approaching silenced her. She watched in stunned silence as a black SUV pulled into the driveway, its tinted windows concealing its occupants. The man in the suit nodded to the driver, then turned to Karen, his voice tinged with a hint of sympathy. I'm sorry, Mom, but it's time for you to go. This matter is now out of your hands. Karen watched, her heart sinking, as the SUV pulled away, taking Colonel Harrington with it. She stood there, alone and defeated, her carefully constructed plan crumbling around her. As Susan approached, her expression one of concern, Karen realized that her quest for power and control had ultimately backfired, leaving her with nothing but a lingering sense of regret and a newfound respect for the complexities of the world beyond her neighborhood.